In this video, we'll look at getting some materials in our Art Deco train station. I've added in the Station Master Office sign down over here in the corner, and resized a little bit the tracks A and B signs, making sure they're centered above that canopy as we did in the last video. Now I'm ready to get some materials going. It's always important to look up reference when you're assigning materials, especially if it's in a period style or something that's been done before. For example, this is in the Chrysler Building in New York, a rich example of Art Deco at its height. There's rich warm colors, an emphasis on metallics, a wide range in both hue and in saturation, bright white lights, and metal in the fixtures. This is an example of an Art Deco mural. Notice the emphasis on fast cars, fast trains, and fast blimps. Again, we see smooth gradients, rich colors, and subtlety in the lighting. Finally, another Deco mural, again showing the same traits: fast cars, machined objects, metallics, and rich colors. What I've done here is to start to sketch out a palette for Art Deco. Also, searching around for Art Deco color palettes, as many people have established a palette for use in contemporary paint. As an example, this is CaliforniaPaints.com in their Art Deco Art Moderne colors, and we can see these same rich colors and metallics showing up. There's our blue range, our silvers, our bronzes, and our warm colors. Additionally, here on Creative Color Schemes, we see the same thing. The rich colors, the emphasis on machined and metallics, and the definite foray into blues and purples. What I've done then here is to quickly block out a color palette. Based on another reference image of some Art Deco metalwork, I've got a metals palette and also a representative sample for my walls, with the major color being what I'd like to do most of the walls in, and then my accent colors lining up next to it, so I can see both the size and the amount of color. In 3ds Max then, I'll press M for my material editor. This pulls up the Slate material editor, and we need to get Mental Ray on as our rendering engine because we're going to use Mental Ray materials. We have different rendering engines available here in 3ds Max, but typically Mental Ray is going to give us very good photoreal results. I'll click on the Render Setup button, and under Render Setup, down under the bottom, under Common Parameters, I'll choose Assign Renderer, and in the Production Renderer, I'll choose NVIDIA Mental Ray. I'll click OK, and now I have Mental Ray materials available. The one I'm going to use primarily is the Arkendesign material. It's a versatile utility material with different templates available for most common things. Typically when I'm working, if it's not skin or car paint, it's an Arkendesign. We've also got other Autodesk materials here which are variations on the Arkendesign for specific things. I'll double click on Arkendesign, double click on the sample sphere to make it bigger, and double click on the material to show it in the parameter editor. I'll also turn on the background, clicking on Show Background in Preview, and now when this reflects I can see how it's going to behave. We'll start out with our main wall paint. I'll click on the color, and this is the main color of the material in general light. In here, I can put in my colors by a 0 to 1 scale of RGB or hue saturation value. I'll bounce back over to my color swatches and get those hue saturation value numbers. Here in my color palette in Photoshop, I'll switch over to hue saturation brightness. And there it is, 50, 67, and 99. In Max then, I can pull my hue up, and because the numbers vary slightly, I can either convert or approximate it. I need a warm yellow that is fairly saturated and really quite bright. This will work nicely. You could do the math and convert, or you can approximate it. If it looks right in the render, it's right. With that color picked, I'll name the material. I'll call this Wall Paint Main. Now to deal with the reflection, because right now it's very glossy. I'll pull back the reflectivity, maybe about 0.25. I'll also pull back the glossiness to 0.3, so it's got a very soft reflection on it. I'll scroll down too, and into the interpolation section. What this lets us do is interpolate a material's reflection at a % of the rendering resolution. So we get stuff going on in the reflection, instead of a really crisp reflection where it shouldn't be. Most materials are actually sort of glossy and reflective just a little bit. Not a mirror, but stuff happening that lets us know it's slightly reflective. I'll leave it at half res and take up the neighboring points here to 4, so it's a blurry reflection. Now I can assign this. What I'll do is either pick objects, clicking on them, or by name. If you press H for hit or select object by name, we'll pull up this dialog that allows us to select objects. I'll make sure in the select from scene dialog that I'm using everybody, or I'm displaying all, and I'll scroll down and find all of my wall objects. There's all the walls, and I've got some flexibility about how I apply these materials. To start, I could take all of the wall objects, picking one, holding shift, and picking the last, clicking OK, and assigning this material. Now all the walls are yellow, and it works, although I may want to change this around a bit. We can see that there's some walls I still need to catch, and some other pieces needing other materials. I'll make a few more materials and see my palette together, and assign them just like this one. I'll make sure I catch this wall over here, the wall offices, and click the Assign Material to Selection button. I'll also do it on this big back wall, and I'm starting to see my colors come out. What I'll typically do sometimes is to make a bunch of materials and see them all together here in the Material Editor, and then assign them by name very quickly. Here's that one again. I'll double-click on Arc and Design, double-click on the material to see it or edit its properties, and double-click on the sample sphere. I'll call this Wall Accent 1. For this, I'll look at my palette. I think my Wall Accent 1 is going to be this rich brown, and I'll see what it looks like. I'll pull down that reflection. Here's 0.3 and 0.3 on the gloss. I'll put in my color, clicking on the color swatch, and dialing in a rich brown. I tend to work by hue, saturation, and value quite often, although if you'd like to work with RGB, you can. There's that brown, and I'll deepen it just a little bit, almost a tobacco color we'll call it, or a deep chocolate, or something in that range. Now I'll start to pick these large frames and assign. I'll pick one, move my render setup out of the way or close it, hold Control, pick another, and assign material to selection. It's neat to see the colors come out. If the wireframe color is confusing, press F4 to turn that off, and we can see our colors emerging. We could even assign material by face, assigning materials to the polygons in these elements to really separate them further. For example, we might choose another accent color for the outside parts here that are round, and leave the inner ones at brown. We can also hide and isolate objects as we need to get in and assign materials. What I'll do then is make the rest of my materials like this, picking the colors and assigning them by object, getting the whole scene with at least solid colors so far. Then I'll start to deal with things that need a texture or an image that's part of a material, such as the floor. For now though, I'll keep making my materials, dialing back their shininess so they're slightly glossy, and assigning them, composing the room and its colors for a dramatic Art Deco scene.